This is made up of wires. We are decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Good to have everybody back. My browser isn't updating in OBS. Give me a second. Let me fix that. Alright, there we go. Let's see if these graphs load this time. Yes. So, we are decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If you want to know more about this project, you can go to soten.z.dev, where you'll see progress for many of the overlays that we're currently working on. I mentioned yesterday that I had started working on the center stage overlay for the HD version of Symphony of the Night, which is a version that first appeared on the PSP game. It appears to be an early dev version or an earlier dev version of the game, which may have been accidentally included on the disc. It's not clear to me how exactly it got there. But looks a lot like the PlayStation version, but with some tweaks for the PSP. It is compiled for the PlayStation, so it's GCC optimized. It looks a lot like the PlayStation versions that we normally see. But it was shipped on the PSP discs. So we were looking at the center stage there, and I'm gonna keep looking at that. So when a new overlay is created, especially an overlay like this, the center stage for PlayStation was completely decompiled. But when you're bringing in a different version of the game, you often run into issues where the code is slightly different, or maybe data is different between the two versions, and we need to reconcile that somehow. And we can do that with macros by conditionally compiling some things and not others. Or possibly the code was written in a way where if we tweak it slightly, it will compile correctly on both versions of the game. And so we're going to go through and look at some of those things today. I'm not sure exactly what we'll find. There's some areas that I worked on several months ago in the for the PlayStation version that aren't matching here for the center stage, but I believe they're already being pulled into the warp room. So I want to see what's going on. Maybe I just have some memory offsets incorrect. There's a lot of little bookkeeping stuff that goes on when you're doing overlays. So I want to see what those issues might be. So I'm going to look at the center stage, and we have a lot of methods. So we see these contiguously in memory for the stage overlays, and these are shared among basically all of the stage overlays. So when we get it right one place, usually it works everywhere else. And these are all very simple functions, but in this case they're not matching, and I want to figure out why that's the case. So we put common stage functions one level up from the stage overlay itself, and I believe these are in create entities horizontal, the ones that we're looking at. Let me see if I can get a better display here. I don't want to wrap. And we'll pull some of these into decomp.me and figure them out. So create entities to the left isn't terribly complicated. The MAD version is actually MAD. The debug room version is a little strange. But what we see in each of these stage overlays is part of the data that comes with them is an ordered list of all entities in the stage in horizontal order and in vertical order. Actually, it might be for the room. Sorry. No, it is for the stage. So when the player is moving and the viewport or camera for the player is scrolling, these methods are called then to determine, has that view moved enough that I need to load a new entity into memory, or allocate the primitives and other things for it, because it's getting close. On the flip side, has it moved far enough out of the viewport that it can be destroyed? So in general, though, these are relatively simple functions. This one, so on either side of these lists, there are sigils. Sigils are just special values to indicate that you're at the front of the list or you're at the back of the list. These are contiguous arrays. I'm using list as a general term, not the data structure. And so as this is looping through, if it gets to the beginning of that list, there's a special value. It will terminate and say, I don't need to create anything else. If it gets to the end of the list, kind of the same thing. It will terminate then. So I want to look at this create first entities. Yeah, find first entity to the right. It's not in. Find entities horizontal. This is actually even simpler than that other one. Just a very basic loop, checking for a condition. Where are we in this layout? And so what I'm thinking is that either the pointer that, or the symbol for this array I got wrong, and that's why it's not matching when I pull this in, or possibly it's a different implementation. So much other code uses this implementation, though, that I would be a little surprised if it is different. Hey, Roman, good to have you back. Good to 90% match on the PSP version. Do you know offhand what the match is on the PlayStation version? Gabe 2005 ++. That's like Microsoft's ultimate product, I think. Good to have you. We don't need every version of the game decompiled. Possibly to get an ultimate version of Soten, depending on what your version of ultimate is. I think that'll probably be a bigger issue than technical issues. It'll be a political issue at that point, what the ultimate version of Soten is. But the goal is, ports to various platforms. Obviously, people would love a PC port. There are people working on ports, and the work we're doing and that I've been streaming about is helping to make as much of this portable as possible. Portable not as in like portable, but relocatable in memory. And once we get to the point where code can be recompiled and we don't have to worry about specific memory offsets or addresses, the idea of porting that to a different system and a different tool chain becomes much, much easier. All right, so I'm going to grab this assembly from find first entity to the right first. And go back over to decomp.me. So if you haven't been on the stream before, we use decomp.me as a collaborative decompiling editor. So I'm going to put in assembly that's been extracted from the game. This function is relatively small. It should be a pretty straightforward function. This is the first thing I see here, which maybe we don't even need to decompile, we can just do this first, is there is a symbol here, which is a variable that's been created during extraction. Splat64, which was a tool originally used for N64 decompilation, and has been extended to support a lot of other decompilation, looks through a binary, tries to find different segments in that binary, uses other resources that we can provide, like a symbol map, And then when it finds addresses or offsets that match in that symbol map, we'll give those a nice human-friendly name. In our function, the human-friendly name that we're looking for is global layout object horizontal, which is this list of things. But the splat during the extraction didn't find an address that matched in that symbol table, and so just gave it a generic name based on the address. So my guess is that when I was defining these symbols, I just screwed up. And that would actually be really nice because a lot of these will just fall into place, and that should work fine. And so this symbol here, I'll get into the decompiled version of it in a second, but these two symbols should be the same thing, and they both should be that same array. Oh, actually, sorry, it's not an array; it's a pointer. And so this, yeah, it might be legitimate that I haven't mapped this. So I'm going to decompile. Scratch will create this editor. I get a C editor on the left. I get the assembly as was uploaded into Scratch, and then the assembly that we're producing here. I always add no built-in as an option because we have the PS1 SDK has signature differences for some of the standard libc functions that are different from the built-in functions. I haven't decided. I talk about this pretty much every time I do it, but I like having the declarations for those functions as they're defined in the documentation rather than relying on the built-in ones. What are the chances that those signature differences for those libc functions are going to make a difference? Probably pretty low because most people don't have them declared in their context. But sometimes I get things in my head and then I don't want to change. And this is one of those times. And then do I want to submit a patch to decomp.me or not to fix that? I don't know. So we do have this variable. It's not defined in the context. The context is like a big header file. And the decompiler uses this to find structure definitions, different declarations of variables. If a symbol in here matches something that we have in our assembly that we're uploading, it'll put that in place. And in this case, it didn't. So I'm going to just look at this first one. We have nice documentation for this one. And it says, of course, that this variable is undeclared. I'm going to replace the automatic one. And then we have a constant here. And I need to go look that up. I'm not sure if that is in... Okay, it's just this. This is the magic start value at the front of this array. So it uses a 32-bit, well, that would be a 16-bit value. It uses that to tell me if we're at the front of the array or not. This glayout object horizontal is a cursor that scans one direction or the other. And in this case, I don't think we have, we're not using it, but there's actually another variable that says what direction was this last going as well. So when we compile that, yeah, we get a match. The only difference is we have this symbol that's missing, and we can replace all of those. Oops, sorry, back. So the symbol is wrong. Oh, 96 still on PlayStation. That's good. Good evening, Luigi's Evil. Catching up on chat. PSP version being the closest to being the ultimate version. I still think there's so many iconic voice lines and script oddities in the PlayStation version that I know the additional features are nice for the PSP version, but it would be nice to have the PlayStation script, I think. Yeah, the Saturn stuff will be interesting too. I haven't looked too deeply into that. I know there's some oddities due to the resolution between the two games, because the native resolution on the Saturn is different than the native resolution on the PlayStation, and they just kind of squished things to get it to fit. And how will that end up translating into code as we're decompiling it? Will be interesting to see. I don't know where things get scaled or if any changes to the code will be necessary. Good to have you again, Dig Down Deep. Nice to have you on the stream for the first time, Rocky. All right, so I'm going to get back to this. So I'm going to replace this horizontal symbol with the one that the decompiler had, and it is a perfect match. So what do we do? Because we can't compile it without that symbol. First I want to see, did I define that symbol correctly? So we store symbols for each stage in the config directory. There's a symbols file, the version of the game, and then the overlay name. And this is kind of just a big gross list of some variable name as well as its address. And the address that we're looking for basically is embedded in that symbol that was decompiled. And I see that those addresses are oh, that's not the right one. I need G layout object horizontal. And it hasn't been defined here. So I'm going to create a new symbol and give it the address of that was embedded in that variable name. And while I'm here, there's a vertical version of this as well, and it's probably worth doing that one at the same time. And we can see how many of these end up falling out from that. To find the vertical version, I'm going to open one of those. And I happen to know what these are because I've been in this. One, I wrote these originally, I decompiled these originally, but also I've been in this overlay for about a week now and familiar with where all these things are. So I want to find first entity above. Yeah, that's good. And so we get the address for that one here. So I'll add that to the symbol table as well. Oops. Let's undo that. There we go. So now I have both of those. We can look at how those are currently brought in during compilation as well. There's kind of a chicken and the egg issue when you're bringing in new overlays, especially when you want to reuse code for existing overlays. And the issue is I need code helps me find where symbols are, but I need those symbols to help interpret the code. And so there's a lot of things that are relatively consistent, and if most of these are actually gone now from the symbol table. But some of the things at lower addresses, for many of the symbols, they're the same. The tooling that will bootstrap these overlays will actually go through and try to find many of these symbols, especially for functions that have matching implementations across overlays. So it's not as difficult as it was in the past to start a new overlay. So I'm going to clean. I haven't cleaned since I updated my repo. So I'm running clean. That'll clean all the build artifacts. Extract will go back to the original game binaries that were pulled from the disk and pull out assembly that hasn't been decompiled yet. It'll pull out assets and then make, without a symbol, we'll build those back, the ones that we're currently building, and then do a hash check of what we've built versus what was there. So this is telling me that this find first entity above assembly file, this line at the end, Vim is telling me this file has changed, and that's because when we extract it again, now we have symbol names for some of those addresses that were previously auto-generated. So we can load the new version of that, and then instead of the auto-generated symbol name, we have the one that we're expecting. So that's nice. So what we should be able to do now, going back to the this create entities page, we have, for the things that we haven't decompiled yet, we include the assembly, and both the GCC compiler used for this as well as the MetroWorks compiler will allow you to embed assembly within a C file, and it'll kind of just come into the final compiled object the way that you've included it without really any modification there. So what we want, I'm going to find first entity above and find first entity below, the vertical ones. Or the horizontal ones are fine. We'll try to use those implementations now and see if those compile correctly. I should have shown at the beginning how they're not compiling, but trust me, they were failing, and there was no match. So I'm just going to include this like any other header. For just practical purposes, we have a bunch of this shared code in header files. I know that's not a pretty common thing that you'd see in a C project, but based on some of our make rules and other patterns that we have, it's most convenient to have them this way. So there still are some things that are missing. We don't have a declaration yet for this, and we're missing this these macros that I had to include in the scratch as well. I'm going to see what file defines those. They're probably defined in create entity. Oh, they're in st private. I'm going to open that as well. Just double check what we have here. So what I want to be able to do is the original C file before I brought in this overlay was very simple. It just included this other create entity header file, and the center stage didn't have to do any. All this code was already shared common code, and so we want to get back to that. I can spell. So we're still missing declarations for these, and so we need to figure out where those declarations are. I see. So these were in, this is the header file we want to include. The declarations for these are here. So we'll use, for this HD specific version, we'll use externed declarations, which tells the compiler these aren't being, these shouldn't be stored in this area or this object that's being created for this file. They exist somewhere else, and at link time you should be able to find these symbols. Let's try that again. Oops. All right, and that worked. So what I'm hoping now is that all of these, the remaining symbols for these can be, are already working. We should be able to do the vertical ones as well. Find where those are, above and below. Oh, I did the wrong one. And I'd expect this to match as well, and it still matches. So we can kind of quickly go through these. And what I know that I may have more symbols that I haven't mapped yet. And so I want to be a little cautious about how I do this, because it's easy. I could throw this all away and just go to that single include statement. But then if I fail, now I have to back it all out and go through it incrementally anyway. So I'm just going to go through it a few at a time. And hopefully these all end up working out. And if they do, then I'll... Okay, so we ran into another one. We have some... the object layout object position horizontal isn't defined anywhere yet. And so this actually tells us how we can find this and find the address. We could go back to the assembly, but we can find this another way as well. When these are extracted, Splat is going to create data files. These are uninitialized variables, and when you have static uninitialized values, globals, the compiler will guarantee that they're set to 0. And they go into a section of that binary object called BSS or SBSS. There's... I can't remember any of them now. There's some conflict over what BSS stands for, but the S is small. But it's small, or data that hasn't been initialized. So we want to look at create entity. And so we have some of these already. Here's the pointer to create object horizontal, and the pointer to create layout object vertical. And then we have two 32-bit values. The Splat has split these up as 4 byte values each, and it's done that because only the first byte is accessed, and so it wants to, when the compiler is allocating space for these, it's going to try to put those on word boundaries, and the word for this 32-bit MIPS processor is 32 bits. So even though one byte is being allocated, it's going to put each of those bytes into its own word and just use the first part of it. But this layout is exactly the same as what is declared here. So we have our horizontal pointer, our vertical pointer, and then our position values in order. And so when we look here, we have our horizontal pointer, our vertical pointer, and then these two addresses for these labels. Those are the addresses of those layout position bytes. 1 second. Sorry about that. The uh, OBS froze, and I was trying to get onto Twitch in a browser and chat. Anyway, back to what we're doing. I'm actually going to have to end a little early. I have some. My son hurt his arm, and we're needing to get some X-rays. So I need to get off a stream and handle that. I will just to finish off the idea that I was talking about earlier. We're going to not go to the US. We're going to go here, and we're going to add those same symbol names here in the same way. And put in these addresses that are over here, and we'll do the same thing, extract again, and attempt to reuse that code instead of the extracted assembly. Yeah, I think everything's going to be okay. Just he hurt the same arm previously, and so we just want to make sure that everything works out okay. I'm gonna stop the stream rather abruptly. I'll do my standard close though. Thanks everybody. Really appreciate you coming back. I'll be back tomorrow, and then I'll be gone for a while. My wife suggested that I pre-record something, and I might do that just to have something up next week as well. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. If you want to know more about the Symphony of the Night decompilation project, soten.z.dev, find links to GitHub, find links to Discord server. Have fun. Come on this journey with us, decompile. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.